is so good to be back here. I made such wonderful friends the last time I was here. It's become one of my favorite conferences of the year, and I work for a company that produces a lot of them. So I always leave inspired, I always leave with new ideas, and part of the reason I do is because of you. So I was really happy that I was given an opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today to actually talk about you, because you're one of the mainstays of this conference, and I feel like we don't really understand exactly what you do and why you do it. And this year in particular, there's a great place to work for all lesson embedded in your story. So I also know that you don't like to talk about yourself very much.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
So this, just even being willing to be here is an act of generosity and contributing to the idea that the more we share and know about each other's lives, the more that we can be allies to each other. So thank you very much for that. Let's just start with the basics. I'd like to know a little bit more about being a president and chief strategy officer for this company at this time, especially as you've been looking to change your methodology and reach more people. What has your life been like in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So when I joined Great Place to Work, I actually got a call from Michael when he took over the organization, and you know, his message to me was that Great Place to Work was making a big turn. That for 20 years we had spent time talking to the converted, folks who really believed in why people mattered and how people could make a difference, and that we were going to have to reach the next 80% of organizations that get the people matter, but also have a whole set of other business priorities, and they're really trying to understand how do I prioritize people relative to everything else I have to do. And so we were going to have to tell a different kind of story than the story we'd told, in the first 20 years. And we'd have to come with data, and we'd have to be deliberate and confident about why it mattered, and really prove and deliver results. And for me, that was an exciting challenge, and that's what I came to do.
And what have you been doing before that?
So I was running a company, a financial services technology company that helped small businesses raise capital.
And how did Michael find you?
So Michael and I were on opposite sides of transactions. He was coaching businesses on how to grow, small and medium businesses, and I was getting them capital. And we were speaking the same language. And so when he joined Great Place to Work, he thought, I want to find some like-minded folks who can continue this kind of conversation.
So this is one of the few times where the search for culture fit really, really worked.
It worked, and it really mattered in terms of his choices, so I appreciate that.
So as you're rebooting the company and moving it in this new for all direction, what were some of the things that you first started with? How did you sketch out your strategic plan?
Yeah, I think the first thing was, how big do we want to go? And I was here yesterday talking about kind of the scope of really the pursuit, and it was really 1 billion. We want to impact the lives of 1 billion people. And so we had to do the math, and the simple equation was that we have to really focus in on the largest companies in the world, and ensure that all of the people that work for them are feeling it at every level of the organization. And at the same time, we have to send a very clear message to small and medium businesses that it matters. There's no way to get to 1 billion otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so we really had to look at the who, and then we had to really think about and talk about the what. What would be a compelling message that really would get folks to focus in on this topic.
So what would a typical day been like for you, especially when you were first starting out?
Yeah, so a huge part of my time and my energy is really spent talking to senior executives, really sitting in boardrooms, really understanding what are the business priorities for an organization, and helping senior executives connect the dots back to how people can help further advance or accelerate their path to additional revenue, their path to turn around specific financial performance measures. So it's really helping senior executives think through what's the path, and then how do we execute this path, not in the C-suite, but how do we execute it on the ground, on the plant floor.
This sounds a little bit like executive therapy to me. And we talk a lot about in this business, and certainly in my beat in race and inclusion, which which I started about the same time that you and Michael were embarking on this adventure. So I feel like I've been on a learning journey myself. But one of the things that keeps popping up is the ability to survive difficult conversations. And it seems like you've really given yourself a master class in that. Not that numbers are not a gateway to very difficult conversations. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what were some of the emotional points in some of these conversations as you're bringing to the attention of executives the problems that they're actually having?
Yeah, it's a really tough conversation. It's a tough business. I started my career in strategy consulting. When you do strategy consulting, you're talking about the marketplace. You're talking about how do you win or lose. What kinds of things can you do differently? When you do, kind of behavior change consulting, culture change consulting, the first thing you do when you walk into that boardroom is hold up a mirror.
Yeah.
That's a really scary thing. You hold up a mirror and say what you think is happening in your organization is actually not the real life experience of the people that are supposed to be, delivering the best for your clients. And that's a really tough conversation. Because depending on who's on the other side of that mirror, they may not be ready to hear it.
And you are also holding the mirror, and they may not be expecting it to be you.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I just want to tread into some delicate territory here.
Yeah.
Is that what is it like being, a woman with an interesting past, which we're going to get into in terms of just where you come from and how you've lived and where you've lived, and a woman of color at that.
Yeah.
And now you're presenting charts and graphs that are hard to hear. How has that been for you?
Yeah, no, it's, just on any given, Monday, it's difficult. But when you come with the full force of that red box, it actually is a little bit easier. Because I come with the full weight of 10,000 organizations, that we work with who have gone through this path, that have looked at their data, that have made improvements. So I'm not coming, because it's my opinion. I'm coming because the data proves it. And that's just a very different kind of conversation. It's more difficult to dismiss. Mm-hmm. If it's not coming in the package you like, you still have to take a hard look at it. And oftentimes the door is open because they know there's a problem. And so, it may take them some time to take ownership of their role in changing it, but ultimately the data does ultimately tell the story.
So let's talk about current events for you. You had a confluence of things happen in your life that changed your work plan a bit. Could you talk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So, for most of my working life, 80, 100-hour weeks are, I ate that for breakfast. That was, that was just a regular week. And, when I joined Great Place to Work, we turned up the dial on that, just in terms of travel and sitting down with, with organizations around the country. And, along came, a new member of my family, which was Uma. And I didn't.
You personally produced Uma.
I personally
just
produced.
Wander in.
Yep.
So you're on a plane. You got a roller bag.
I did. Somehow.
And Uma is yes. Yeah. Okay. Just clarifying.
And at the time, you don't know what to expect. And so I didn't adjust my life or my routine in any way. And so I was, 3 weeks after she was born. I was, at a conference at the Four Seasons delivering a presentation to 200, senior executives and loving it. And watching baby Uma on a Nest camera as I, flew to my next conference. My dear husband held the fort. She slept through the night, but I wasn't a part of any of it. And that, it's almost like PTSD. You're not really actually sure what's happening, but something's changed and you haven't fully come to terms with it. So
the epidural hadn't even worn off.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, we're not coming to terms with any of it.
I remember being in a meeting where we were talking about a partnership with Anil Boozri, CEO and chairman of Workday, and Michael and a few others. And Anil, I think 2 weeks before Uma was born, I told him that we were heading to the hospital and what was happening. And then again, 3 weeks and some change later, we were in a boardroom talking about the next phase of the partnership. And he looked at me as I walked in and then looked at Michael and said, "Is this even legal?" And so there was, and Michael responded appropriately, let's just say it's not a best practice. And we moved on. But it was a really busy and loaded time.
So I picture it in my mind as that great scene from Forrest Gump where he just stops running. Did you have a moment where you just stopped?
You know, when I didn't stop, what I had was I had a leader in Michael who saw that I was heading for a crash. He saw that I was not letting go of anything. So I was, running fast because we have a lot of work to do and a lot of exciting partners. And at the same time trying to make it all fit and stitch it together at home. And he saw that, he's lived long enough to know that it doesn't work for forever. So he helped me take a pause.
It's a poignant thing to think about is that if you are a company called Great Place to Work for All and people are falling apart inside that, it'd be like a love guru who can't get a date, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. The cobbler's children have no shoes. Yeah.
So what was it like for you to hear that conversation? And you know that I'm madly in love with both you and Michael, and I love our partnership with you. But I can imagine that must have been a difficult moment for you.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
What were you afraid was going to happen if you gave something up?
I think there's a ton of emotions running through you when someone else says, this is too much. One is just, have I failed? Have I dropped the ball in some way? What signal am I giving off that I can't handle this? I think, there's also a fear that, that the movement will move on without you.
Right.
And
without your fingerprints on it, without your heart.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So what was that conversation like? I feel like Oprah right now. I never get to have these kinds of conversations.
I won't cry.
No one's getting a car.
Tears,
I'm really sorry.
It's tough. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with Michael. He is.
He gets what he wants.
He gets what he wants. He gets what he wants. And you don't see it coming. You're ready, and he finds a trap door somehow. And it was a tough conversation. But it was more about taking the long view. That's really where he started. And it was an unusual conversation. This was the busiest time of year for Great Place to Work. For me to take a pause, there would be an impact on the business.
Yeah.
And so he was making a decision that you could say in the short term didn't make financial sense. Mm-hmm. But in the long term, he felt made very good sense.
Tell us a little bit about how you grew up and where you grew up and all that good family stuff.
Sure. So I'm the last of 7 kids of parents who are Nigerian immigrants. And I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. And, I grew up with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because all of my older brothers and sisters were all born in Nigeria. So they had this, there was this insider-ness and this sense of belonging around having been born there and having that context. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't have it. And so there was a part of me that really wanted it. And I would often, as I grew up, I would often get letters from extended family that were still in Nigeria asking for everything from, chewing gum to blue jeans. Wow. And I didn't get it. And I didn't get why they needed those resources when we had them. And the best my mom could explain it, she was a nurse's aide, but the best she could explain it was that the economy doesn't support their talents. And so there was a part of me that said, maybe there's a role for me in that. Maybe I can help people. Maybe I can help people, become part of the mainstream in terms of what they do and how they're valued. Didn't know how that would play out in life, but at the very early age of 7, I was pretty focused on fighting my way back into that world and adding some value in that way.
So, and where did you go to school?
Undergrad, I went to Harvard.
And then you went on to Yale as well?
No. No Yale. Nope.
Okay. Right.
Yale's the enemy.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
Hey, I went to Brown.
Just kidding.
I have no friends. So what did you study at Harvard, and what was next for you?
I studied economics and East Asian studies with a focus on Japan.
Well, so you really are a global citizen.
You know, I try to be. I try to be.
All right, very good. So tell me what your brothers and sisters are doing and where everybody is.
Yeah, they're spread across the world. So I do have a sister who, you know, made the reverse commute from New York to Abuja, Nigeria. So she lives there with her kids, and she met her husband in Japan when she was visiting me. So that's, you know, very, very kooky story.
Stop.
I have a brother in London. He does private equity on the continent in Africa, and then I have brothers and sisters throughout, you know, the U.S. You know, from Tennessee to Connecticut and Boston.
Don't you want to go to this family reunion?
Be careful.
Picture there's like jollof rice cook-offs.
Exactly,
and stuff like
lots of jollof rice.
Okay. So let's just move back, and we only have a couple more minutes, to the best practices that the company that you work for and have helped create and shape along the way actually utilized to make sure that you survived and thrived. What can we learn from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the one thing that Michael did, and I don't know what kind of soul searching or you know, time he took to kind of think it through, but he went beyond what we do traditionally when we try to think about how do we create a place for women at different stages of their life. He went beyond, you know, the lactation support. He went beyond the, you know, maternity leave. He really started to think about just kind of me as a whole person and my circumstances and what I contribute to the business. And it's a really powerful thing when leaders do that, when you kind of step back and say, okay, what's the full picture here? And what he did is he thought about kind of our value chain as a business. You know, where are the places we add value to other organizations? What, you know, sort of which undergirds our business model. And he thought about, you know, what are the ways I really need Chinwe to continue plugging in, and what can we just let go of? I think, you know, traditionally we have sort of a very singular mind around what it means to be a producer in an organization, and a lot of it is, you know, you've got to have the face time, right? You got to put in the face time. And when you're going through, you know, certain stages of the biological clock, you know, time is the enemy. It's a constraint. It's a hard constraint. And so if production is measured only in terms of like the time you spend, you know, you're going to lose every time. And so he just reimagined, you know, how I could, you know, be a producer, add value in the sort of broader context, but not have to spend the same amount of time on planes, trains, and automobiles to do it.
And you're going to get practice doing that with yet another person who's joining your family.
Exactly, exactly.
When is he going to arrive?
He's due in June. He's due in June.
Oh my God.
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that.
So this time around, do you feel more prepared?
Absolutely not.
And that you're...
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like you're actually at the right company, so that you can make it up as you go along.
Exactly right.
Thank you so much for telling us
Thank
your
you,
story.
Ellen.
Thank you so much for letting us brag on you.
I appreciate that.